Good morning, St. Francis, and good morning, people of God. It is Tuesday, the 11th day of November 2025. It is Tuesday of the 32nd week of the year, the 32nd week in Ordinary Time. It is also the day in which we honor St. Martin of Tours. Now, all this week, we're going to honor a different saint on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We go back to an ordinary day of the 32nd week of the year on Friday. But all these great saints that kind of follow after we celebrate the Feast of the Lateran is kind of this interesting sort of pattern, that follows that happens. And so yesterday we celebrate St. Leo the Pope. Today we do Martin of Tours, and then we'll get to the other ones as we move down the road. So anyway, but on this very, very, very cold day, very cold morning that it is, we remember Martin of Tours. Who was he? Well, he was a convert to Christianity. He was a member of the cavalry troops, the Roman legion cavalry troops in Gaul, in France, about the 4th century, 300s. And he has kind of a conversion experience to become Christian with an encounter of a beggar on a road, in which in the middle of winter the beggar is freezing and asks something from Martin, and he gives half of his cloak to him. He uses his sword to cut half of his cloak to give it to the beggar. Beggar is revealed to be Christ, and because of that, Christ goes ahead and says he's going to bless Martin for his generosity. He becomes bishop of the city of Tours, which had a fancy Latin name when it was part of the Roman Empire. But he becomes a patron saint, again, of people who are unfortunately on very hard times, the marginalized, the poor, but also those in various branches of the military and things like that. He was patron saint of the Third Republic of France, which is very interesting. That the Third Republic had a patron saint. There have been 5 republics. Will there be a 6th? We'll wait and see what happens. France is going through some changes too. They need Martin's intercession perhaps within that. But remember him. It is Veterans Day. It was the day on which the armistice was signed to end World War I, again, purposefully on this day of St. Martin. And so remembering all of those who serve, who continue to serve, who have served within the military, within the United States too, and within other countries. Armistice Day is also celebrated in other countries on this November the 11th, again, connecting it with Martin of Tours. So our readings for today, though, speak of wisdom. The Book of Wisdom continues, and this is the wonderful passage within the Book of Wisdom in which really death is not an end. So the interesting thing about the Old Testament is that before Jesus begins to talk about life after death, there is this sense in which Israel is beginning to gain an understanding of this, again, which paves a way in Christian understanding, for the coming of Christ, in the sense that the just do not just disappear, that they are in the hands of God, and that their lives do not move into nothingness, but they move into something more spectacular. Again, the sense in which we need to deal with this aspect of our human lives, that it seems to come to an end. But with God, can anything truly come to an end? Because that would mean that God would have a limit. And if God gives life, then that life has to have no end itself. So there must be something that awaits us, after death. And the Book of Wisdom in this passage begins to consider that, what that means. But then also that those who pass through death, become, more acquainted with God, become more aware of who and what God is. And like sparks in the sky, and it's like that, like lights, in the darkness. So too do the dead become who bind themselves to God, and who have bound themselves to God in this life and continue to do so in the life that follows this. In Luke's gospel today, we have very interesting, again, Jesus is in that kind of mode in which he is trying to wake up people, to say that, believing in him is not something that brings honors, is not something that people should use, to puff up themselves and to make themselves look more important than others. And so this wonderful parable, about workers who come in from doing the field, and would the master say, oh, that's great, you came in from doing the field, well, why don't you come and sit at my table? We'll all eat and drink together. No, he says, go and prepare me a meal. I want to eat, and you'll eat after me. And so that's the thing. It seems rather crass, and it seems rather, again, insensitive and almost mean mean when Jesus does this parable. But the reality, again, is that we should not be looking, for praise for what it is that we do. We are just useless servants, who basically only do sometimes what we are obligated to do and nothing more. It is the courage, or it is the challenge to move beyond that and to basically give, in ways that we haven't thought about giving, and to be able to be more proactive in coming up with different ways in which we may lend ourselves to the help of others and to the service of others. It isn't just doing what needs to be done, Jesus is saying, and it isn't seeking honors because we just did what needs to be done. It is going above and beyond because we can, and there is no limit to what it is that we can give, and to keep giving, is the mark of a life of God that resides within us. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.